Ronald Davis was 80 years old. He'd served in Vietnam. 2 tours, infantry. He'd seen things that still woke him up at night, 50 years later. But on this Tuesday morning at Denver International Airport, he wasn't thinking about Vietnam. He was thinking about his grandson's college graduation in Boston. First one in the family to finish college. Ronald had promised he'd be there. The airport was crowded. Always was on Tuesday mornings. Business travelers rushing to gates. Families dragging luggage. The usual controlled chaos. Ronald moved slowly through the security line. His knees weren't what they used to be. Neither was his back. But he didn't complain. He'd learned a long time ago that complaining didn't change anything. He wore a simple polo shirt, khaki pants, comfortable shoes, and on his chest, pinned carefully to his shirt, was a small medal, the Congressional Medal of Honor. He'd received it in 1969 for actions in the Mekong Delta. He didn't talk about it much. Didn't like to, but he wore it when he traveled. It reminded him of the men who didn't make it home, of the friends he'd lost, of the weight of survival. This is the human stories, where we share moments of courage, justice, and the price of disrespect. This is the story of a TSA agent who thought a small piece of metal was suspicious, and the 30 soldiers who taught him what that metal really meant. Some people wear authority like a weapon. Some people earn respect through service. And some people learn the difference the hard way. Ronald placed his carry-on bag on the conveyor belt, took off his shoes, pulled out his laptop. The routine was familiar. He'd flown dozens of times since retirement. The TSA agent at the X-ray monitor was young, maybe 25. Name tag said Derek Collins. He had that look, the one some people get when they put on a uniform. Like the uniform gave them power instead of responsibility. Derek watched the screen as Ronald's bag went through. Nothing unusual. Clothes, toiletries, a book. Ronald walked through the metal detector. No beep. Clean, but Derek was staring at him. Eyes locked on the metal on Ronald's chest. "Sir, step aside, please," Derek said. His voice was sharp, commanding, the voice of someone who enjoyed giving orders. Ronald stepped to the secondary, screening area. "Is something wrong? What's that on your chest?" Derek pointed at the Medal of Honor. "It's a military medal, son." Medal of Honor. Derek's eyes narrowed. "I need to inspect it." Ronald felt a flicker of unease. "It's just a medal. I've flown with it dozens of times." "Well, I need to check it. It could be a weapon, or hiding something." "Take it off." The words hung in the air. "Take it off." Ronald looked at Derek, really looked at him. Saw someone who'd never served, never sacrificed, never understood what that medal represented. "Son," Ronald said quietly, "this medal is the highest honor this country can give a soldier. It's awarded by the president for actions above and beyond the call of duty. I'd prefer not to take it off." Derek's face hardened. "I don't care what it is. Airport security regulations state that any metallic object worn on the body must be inspected. Take it off." Other passengers were watching now. A businessman, a mother with 2 kids, an elderly couple, all staring at the 80-year-old man being told to remove his Medal of Honor. Ronald's hands went to the pin, slowly. His fingers trembled slightly. Not from fear, from anger, from the indignity of it. He unpinned the medal, held it in his palm, handed it to Derek. Derek snatched it, turned it over, examined it like it was a suspicious device. "What's this made of?" "Bronze. And it's authentic, if that's what you're wondering." "How do I know that?" "Anyone can buy a fake medal online." Derek's voice got louder. He was performing now. showing everyone how thorough he was, how seriously he took his job. Ronald felt heat rising in his chest. Son, I earned that medal in Vietnam. 1969. I can show you I don't need your life story, old man. I need to verify this isn't a security threat. Old man. The words stung more than they should have. A woman in TSA supervisor uniform approached. Name tag, Sandra Martinez. She'd been watching from her station. Derek, what's the issue? This gentleman is wearing a suspicious metallic object. I'm performing a secondary inspection, as per protocol. Sandra looked at the metal in Derek's hand. Her eyes widened. Derek, that's a potential security risk, Derek interrupted. We can't make exceptions just because someone claims it's important. Sandra's jaw tightened. Derek, that's a Congressional Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration. We inspect everything, Sandra? That's our job. Or did you forget the training? Sandra looked at Ronald, at his weathered face, his calm eyes, the way he stood, even at 80, with a soldier's posture. Sir, I apologize. This should only take a moment. Ronald nodded. I understand you're doing your job, ma'am. I just wish your colleague understood what he's holding. Derek ran the metal through a handheld scanner, swabbed it for explosive residue, made a show of inspecting every inch. The other passengers were getting uncomfortable. Some were filming on their phones. All right, Derek finally said. It checks out. You can have it back. He tossed the metal back to Ronald. Actually tossed it, like it was a set of keys. Ronald caught it, carefully. His hands shook. Not from age. From rage he was barely containing. Anything else? Ronald asked quietly. Yeah, next time don't wear random jewelry through security. Makes my job harder. Random jewelry. The Medal of Honor, random jewelry. Ronald pinned the medal back on. His fingers fumbled slightly. He was 80 years old. He'd killed enemy soldiers to save his platoon. He'd carried wounded men through hostile fire. He'd been shot twice and still completed his mission. And this kid who'd probably never faced anything harder than a difficult customer, called the Medal of Honor random jewelry. Ronald picked up his bag, started to walk toward his gate, and that's when he heard a dot behind him. A voice, deep, commanding, military. Excuse me, what did you just say? Ronald turned. Standing at the security checkpoint was a group of soldiers. 30 of them, maybe more, all in combat fatigues, all carrying duffel bags, all staring at Derek. The man who'd spoken was an officer. Captain's bars. Name tape, Harrison. He was maybe 35. Fit, alert, and his eyes were locked on Derek with an intensity that made the young TSA agent step back. I asked you a question, Captain Harrison said. His voice was controlled, but there was steel underneath. What did you just call that man's medal? Derek looked confused. I was just doing my job. Security protocol. You called it random jewelry. I heard you. We all heard you. Harrison gestured to the other soldiers. They were all watching now, silent, waiting. Sir, I don't know who you are, but on TSA, I have authority. I'm Captain James Harrison, United States Army Rangers. And that man you just disrespected? Harrison pointed at Ronald. That man is wearing the Medal of Honor. Do you understand what that means? Derek's face went pale. I was just... One of the soldiers, a sergeant, stepped forward. That's the highest military decoration in this country. It's awarded for valor in action against an enemy force. Only 3,500 have ever been awarded. Ever. Another soldier, younger, spoke up. His voice was tight with anger. My grandfather was awarded one posthumously. He died saving his squad. That medal represents more courage than you'll ever understand. The soldiers were forming a semicircle now. Not threatening, not aggressive, just ... present. 30 soldiers, all standing in silent judgment of Derek's actions. Captain Harrison turned to Ronald. Sir, I apologize on behalf of every service member here. What you experienced was disgraceful. Ronald shook his head. It's all right, son. Just ignorance. No, sir, it's not all right. May I ask your name? Ronald Davis, Staff Sergeant, retired. 1st Infantry Division. And your medal? When were you awarded it? 1969, Mekong Delta. The soldiers straightened. Several saluted. Captain Harrison extended his hand. It's an honor, sir. Truly. They shook hands. Soldier to soldier. 50 years of history, bridged in a single gesture. Sandra, the TSA supervisor, had gone even more pale. She understood what was happening. Her colleague had just massively screwed up. In public, in front of 30 soldiers. And it was being filmed by multiple passengers. Sir, Sandra said, addressing Ronald, I'm so sorry. This never should have happened. Derek is new. He doesn't know better? Captain Harrison turned to her. Ma'am, with respect, that's not an excuse. Every TSA agent should know what the Medal of Honor looks like. Should understand its significance. I understand, and demanding a Medal of Honor recipient remove his medal? For inspection? That's not protocol. That's disrespect. Derek tried to salvage the situation. Look, I was just following procedure. I didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't ask, another soldier said. Staff Sergeant Williams, older, grizzled. You saw an old man and assumed you could push him around. Show everyone how tough you were. That's exactly what it was. Captain Harrison's voice was quiet now, dangerous. You treated a Medal of Honor recipient like he was a criminal. Made him remove his medal. Called it random jewelry. And threw it back at him. I didn't throw. We saw the video. Harrison held up his phone. 3 passengers sent it to me already. You tossed it. Like it was trash. The crowd around the security checkpoint had grown. More passengers. Other TSA agents. Airport staff. Everyone watching the young agent being surrounded by soldiers who just witnessed his disrespect. One of the soldiers, a young private, had tears in his eyes. My unit lost 6 men last year in Afghanistan. Good men, heroes, and they'll never get the recognition they deserve. But this man? He pointed at Ronald. This man earned the highest honor our country can give. And you treated him like garbage. Derek's hands were shaking now. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I didn't understand. Then you shouldn't be wearing that uniform, Captain Harrison said flatly. You represent security at this airport. You represent authority. And you use that authority to humiliate a hero. Ronald stepped forward. Gentlemen, I appreciate your support. But this young man made a mistake. Let's not, sir, with respect. This isn't just a mistake. Harrison turned to Ronald. This is a symptom of a larger problem. People forgetting. People not knowing. People treating veterans like burdens instead of heroes. He turned back to Derek. Do you know what it takes to earn the Medal of Honor? Derek didn't answer. It takes extraordinary heroism. Risking your life to save others. Going above and beyond the call of duty in the face of enemy fire. Most recipients don't survive the actions that earn them the medal. This man did. And 50 years later, you make him take it off because you think it's suspicious. The airport manager had arrived now. A woman in her 50s, name tag, Rebecca Torres. She'd been called by Sandra. She took one look at the situation 30 soldiers surrounding one of her TSA agents, a Medal of Honor recipient standing in the center, multiple phones recording, and her face went white. What happened here? She asked. Captain Harrison explained, calmly, precisely, every detail. The demand to remove the medal, the inspection, the disrespectful handling, the random jewelry comment, the toss. Rebecca listened. Her expression grew darker with each sentence. When Harrison finished, she turned to Derek. Is this true? Derek stammered. Protocol says ... Did you make this gentleman remove his Medal of Honor? I didn't know what it. Answer the question. Yes. Did you call it random jewelry? Silence. Derek, did you call a Medal of Honor random jewelry? Yes. But I didn't mean. You're fired. The words cut through the noise of the airport like a knife. Derek's face went from pale to ashen. What? You can't. I absolutely can. What you did is inexcusable. You humiliated a veteran. You disrespected the Medal of Honor. And you did it in front of hundreds of passengers and 30 soldiers. You're done. Badge and radio. Now, Derek looked around wildly. At Sandra, at the soldiers, at Ronald, looking for sympathy, support, finding none. He unpinned his badge, handed over his radio, walked away without another word. The crowd parted for him like he was diseased. Rebecca turned to Ronald. Sir, I cannot apologize enough for what you experienced. This is completely unacceptable. TSA will be conducting a full review. Ronald held up a hand. Ma'am, I appreciate that, but I'm about to miss my flight. I'm trying to get to my grandson's graduation. Of course. Sandra, please escort Mr. Davis to his gate personally. First class upgrade. And sir, you'll never pay for a flight through Denver again. Ever. That's my personal guarantee. Captain Harrison stepped forward. Sir, if I may, my men and I are on the same flight. We're headed to Fort Bragg. We'd be honored if you'd sit with us. Ronald looked at the 30 young soldiers, saw himself in their faces. 50 years younger, still believing, still serving. The honor would be mine, Captain. The soldiers formed up, created a corridor, and as Ronald walked through them toward his gate, every single one saluted. 80 years old. Medal of Honor on his chest, surrounded by a new generation of warriors who understood what it meant. The gate was packed. The flight was full. But when Ronald arrived, escorted by Captain Harrison and the Rangers, something extraordinary happened. People started clapping. It started with one passenger, a man in a business suit who'd seen the video. Then another. Then another. Within seconds, the entire gate area was applauding. Ronald felt his eyes sting. He wasn't used to this. Didn't want attention. But these people, they knew. They'd seen what happened. And they were showing their support. The gate agent, a young woman named Maria, had tears streaming down her face. Mr. Davis, we upgraded you to first class. Row 1. And Sir ... Thank you. For your service. For your sacrifice. Ronald nodded. Couldn't speak. On the plane, the 30 Rangers filled the back rows. They insisted Ronald take his first-class seat, but he could see them, hear their laughter, their camaraderie. It reminded him of his own unit, his own brothers. The flight attendants knew what had happened. The whole airport knew by now. Videos were going viral. TSA agent disrespects Medal of Honor recipient was trending on Twitter. Mid-flight, Captain Harrison came forward, sat in the empty seat next to Ronald. Sir, can I ask you something? Of course. What you did in Vietnam. To earn that medal. Can you tell me about it? Ronald was quiet for a long moment. He didn't talk about it, ever. The nightmares were bad enough without reliving it while awake. But he looked at Harrison's face, saw genuine respect, genuine curiosity. This wasn't morbid fascination. This was a soldier asking another soldier to share history dots. So Ronald told him about the ambush in the Mekong Delta, about his platoon pinned down by enemy fire, about the wounded men who couldn't move, about the decision he made, the impossible, suicidal decision. He charged the enemy position alone, covered 30 yards of open ground under heavy fire, took out 3 enemy bunkers with grenades, got shot twice, kept going, gave his platoon time to retreat, saved 17 men, nearly died in the process, spent 6 months recovering in a military hospital, got the medal from President Nixon in 1970, didn't feel like a hero, just felt like he'd done his job. Captain Harrison listened in silence. When Ronald finished, he didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "Sir, with your permission, I'd like my men to hear that story." Ronald hesitated. "I don't know if, sir, they need to hear it. We read about heroes in books, in history. But you're here, real, and what you did. It's the standard we all aspire to." So for the rest of the flight, Ronald sat in the back with the Rangers, and he told them his story. All of it, the fear, the chaos, the split-second decision that saved lives and changed his forever. The young soldiers listened with an intensity Ronald had never seen before. These weren't kids looking for glory. These were professionals learning from a legend. When the plane landed in Boston, something else happened. The captain came on the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we deplane, I want to acknowledge someone special on this flight. Mr. Ronald Davis is a Congressional Medal of Honor recipient. He served in Vietnam with extraordinary valor. This morning, he was disrespected at Denver Airport, but he carried himself with grace and dignity. Sir, on behalf of everyone on this aircraft, thank you for your service. And welcome to Boston." The entire plane erupted in applause. Again, louder this time, Ronald felt tears on his cheeks. Didn't try to hide them. The video went viral. Millions of views. Derek, the TSA agent, became a symbol of ignorance and disrespect. He was fired, blacklisted from federal security work. His face became infamous. The TSA issued a formal apology, mandated new training for all agents on military decorations and how to treat veterans. The Medal of Honor would never be subject to random inspection. Again, Rebecca Torres, the airport manager, created a special Veterans Fast Track program at Denver International. Veterans with proper ID could use an expedited security line. It became a model for airports across the country. Captain Harrison and his Rangers stayed in touch with Ronald. They visited him 3 times, invited him to speak at their base, treated him like the legend he was. And Ronald? He made it to his grandson's graduation. Front row, Medal of Honor on his chest. His grandson mentioned him in his speech, talked about the grandfather who'd taught him about sacrifice and service. The whole auditorium stood and applauded. 6 months later, Ronald passed away, peacefully, in his sleep. His funeral was attended by over 500 people, veterans from every war, active duty soldiers, and 30 Army Rangers who'd learned what real honor looked like. Captain Harrison gave the eulogy. Ronald Davis didn't ask for attention, didn't seek glory. He wore his medal not for pride, but for remembrance, for the men who didn't come home, for the friends he lost, for the weight of being a survivor. And when a young man disrespected that medal, Ronald didn't rage, didn't demand. He stayed calm, dignified, Because real heroes don't need to prove themselves. They just are. We live in a world that's forgetting what sacrifice looks like, forgetting the cost of freedom, forgetting the men and women who paid that cost. Ronald Davis reminded us, not with words, with presence, with grace under pressure, with the quiet strength that comes from having already faced the worst and survived. He was 80 years old, but he was still a soldier, still a warrior, still a brother, and he will be missed. The Rangers fired a 21-gun salute. The flag was folded and presented to Ronald's son. Taps played in the cold November air. And somewhere, in a place beyond words, Ronald Davis was finally reunited with the men he'd saved, the friends he'd lost, the brothers who'd waited 50 years to say thank you. This is the Human Stories, where we believe that honor cannot be bought, respect must be earned. And some medals represent more than metal. They represent everything that matters. If you've served, or if you know someone who has, drop your city in the comments. Let's honor those who wore the uniform, who sacrificed for strangers, who earned the title of hero. Subscribe for more stories about courage, integrity, and the price of forgetting.